Welcome to Search for Signs. My name is Gary Willing. If this information interests you, please press the like and subscribe button and press the bell for notifications. Well, good day to you. It is the 1st of October, and you have made it all the way through 9 months of this year completely. Good job. Alrighty. Now, if you have been paying attention to the world, right, you would probably be well aware, as I am, that this has been a quite difficult year for a lot of people. And one would say probably for everyone, right? Looking at the next few months, do I think it's going to get any easier? Probably not, but I did want to remind us of something that Maitreya said to actually Benjamin Creme's daughter when he appeared as an elderly man in Hyde Park to her some years ago. He said that just because you're having a bad year this year, who's to say that next year won't be the best year of your life? Now, I don't know necessarily if it's per calendar year, like it's it's all of a sudden going to get better on January 1st. I do think a lot of the problems that we're grappling with today will go on into the 2021, but eventually, maybe even 2022 might be the best year ever. But we might have to be dealing with all this next year. I do think it's all a part of the plan. I do think there's a reason why humanity is having to go through a lot of the trials and tribulations that we're doing. I don't think it's going to be the end all of life on this planet. I do think marks the beginning, actually, of life on this earth in a real sense, because all of us have been living under the illusion that we're separate, that what we do does not affect the whole. What the whole does not affect us, and so forth. And what we do to individually amongst each other doesn't affect somebody else, and so forth. What we say has no effect on anybody else. And that's an illusion. We're all one. And I do think that the ultimate solution Maitreya is speaking very simply on TV now, okay? And I'm sure he's giving solutions to our ever-growing problems in the way that he's doing, but ultimately, the way his solution is going to be that we have to start seeing ourselves as one. That's everything. It's economically, politically, environmentally, education-wise, health-wise. We have to start seeing ourselves as one. That's the only way out. And because the way that we have been living under the illusion that we're separate has brought us to this point. Every aspect of our life that we're dealing with right now, unemployment, the pandemic, the political situation going on in the United States and so forth, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more in this video, the social unrest and on, and the environmental problems is all based on the fact that we all believe that we're separate. And he is going to shine a big spotlight on the fact that that's not true. So now I do have some comments to cover, no questions, but some comments, and those are always fine too, because it can help me to expound upon this topic, and we can maybe together learn a little bit more about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom and their priorities by talking about it more, right? If you have a question or even a comment, just post your question or comment as a comment, and I'll do my best to answer it in the next video, or you can email me directly at searchforsigns@mail.com. All right. And as the law of cause and effect says, you'll get the same result either way. Just a really weird answer. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, I digressed. Okay, so the first comment comes from Marcus Torres. Nukes are safe unless weaponized. All right, well, this channel, Search for Signs, is safe unless politicized. Marcus, you have a world of agreement. You have a whole world that agrees with you on that statement. The problem is not one bit of it is true. Nuclear power is not safe in the way that we process it. And Maitreya, when he's speaking more directly to humanity, is going to basically say in a way that only Maitreya could say it is, we need to shut down those nuclear power plants and so forth as quickly as fucking possible because it is killing humanity off. Scientists would agree with you, like I said, and the political world and, everybody, the business world would all agree with what you said. Now, the problem is, science postulates that there's only 3 levels of physicalities: solid, liquid, and gas. And when a Geiger counter is put up on a reactor or a container that has nuclear waste or, the nuclear reactor itself or whatever it happens to be, right? of course, it's not registering, the needle's not going up and down. So they say, oh, it's safe. Well, that's a very crude way of measuring nuclear radiation. The problem is that actually each plane of existence, including the physical plane, there's 7 layers of each plane. So there's 7 subplanes of one plane. Our physical plane is no exception. So just because science is postulating solid, liquid, and gas as the end-all and be-all of the physical plane, there's no truth to that. There's actually 4 other levels above gas called the etheric. Coincidentally, there was a scientist named Wilhelm Reich, who you can look him up on Wikipedia. He actually discovered, it was a wonderful discovery for humanity that really has gone unnoticed, for the most part up until now, that there was a level of physicality above gas. He referred to it and named it he called it the orgon. Now, whether you see it as one plane or not doesn't really matter, but the masters would say that there's actually, that orgon is subdivided into 4 subtle planes called the etheric. The problem with the way that humanity is processing nuclear power today is that the radiation is affecting the etheric planes. Now you might say, well, it doesn't matter to me at all. Well, actually it does, because we owe our health of our physical bodies to our etheric bodies, which is, the etheric body is made up on the etheric plane. So that very subtle, very fine radiation that goes right through lead and right through concrete and so forth and out into the atmosphere is affecting all our etheric bodies. And we, like I said, we owe our health. The masters would say we owe our health to our etheric bodies. So it causes our etheric vehicle to break down, thus causes our immune system to break down and so forth and so forth. But seeing that I'm just giving this information for your consideration, and I'm not trying to convince you of anything, I would suggest that neither one of us go stand in front of a nuclear reactor for very long. Especially I wouldn't put a Speedo on and just go stand in front of a nuclear reactor. I mean, that's dangerous on a lot of levels. It's dangerous to see somebody like me wearing a Speedo, and it would also be dangerous for me to be wearing a Speedo and nothing but a Speedo standing right next to a nuclear reactor. The other problem with that is that this radiation is so fine, you don't even have to be standing in close proximity of that to get affected. It's so fine, it just goes right out into the upper atmospheres, comes out through our rain, goes into our soil, goes into our food supply, and it is saturated everything on this planet. Now, what's also been happening, and the reason why I'm commenting on this is not to harp on what you said, but looking at it historically, right? Nuclear power has never really been safe, and when it's dangerous and something does happen, it's extremely destructive. I mean, just look at Chernobyl. Just look at what happened in Japan not too long ago. So really it's not true to say that it's safe just on that level. Even if you don't believe that the etheric planes exist, it doesn't matter. Just looking at those 2 instances. And when's the next big one going to happen? Just seems, we've had such wonderful news this year about stuff. How long is it going to be before there's another meltdown somewhere, and it's even worse than Chernobyl, and the possibility is always there, right? I mean, so you look at it from that standpoint. Now, the other thing I like about this comment that I wanted to talk about this comment is we can also kind of elucidate and expound upon the activity and the work of our space brothers and sisters, because according to the masters, the UFOs flying in and around our atmosphere, which are occupied by humanity from the other planets in our solar system, mainly Venus and Mars, but also Jupiter and Saturn as well, but mainly from those 2 planets, Venus and Mars. If it wasn't for their work of flying in and around the atmosphere, they're helping to clean our atmosphere up as much as they can, there would be a lot fewer humanity living on this planet at this moment in time, because we'd all be dead. And those people who were still alive and still around would be very, 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 very sick. And there would be not much left of this planet. So we owe really our lives to the Space Brothers. And we owe them a tremendous debt. So again, we can believe it or not or whatever, but Maitreya will be advocating in a very with a great sense of urgency that we need to shut down the nuclear reactors. And it's okay because we actually, and they're talking about it on the news now actually, is we actually have the technology to process nuclear power cleaner, safer, and more stable by a fusion process where we use water and not, I think, plutonium in that way and so forth. And then that will be the bridge between the way that we've been processing it currently to when years from now the Space Brothers give us the technology of light that they use to cleanly power their cities and their ships and so forth. So we're in for a wonderful surprise in terms of technological advances over the next 100 years. But we have to stop damaging the environment the way that we're doing. In fact, actually, Maitreya is going to come out and say it's going to be a surprise for a lot of environmentalists even, that as dangerous as global warming is and greenhouse gases have been, that pales in comparison to the damage that nuclear power is doing. So Maitreya, one of his main jobs is going to be to help those who are, trying to save our planet environmentally, trying to, let's say, bring about the needed changes in the world and so forth, economically and politically and so forth. One of his main jobs is going to be to help them prioritize what's important and do it first, and then do the second most important thing, and the third and fourth and fifth, because even those who are well-meaning have gotten it wrong from the master's point of view. And so even if we did tackle global warming or greenhouse gases in that way perfectly, right, we would still be killing humanity off by nuclear power, according to the masters. So that's why it's the most dangerous thing that we're doing. So we have to deal with that first. So hopefully that helps. All right. Next comment. How dare you, spoken in Greta's accent. Now, the interesting thing about this one is the only foreign accent I can do, every time I do it, it always comes across sounding like a muddled version of Scottish accent. So how dare you? That's the way it makes it sound to me. And I'm sure if you're from Scotland, you're like, what the hell was that? It sounded like somebody strangling a cat. That's not a Scottish accent. This is a Scottish accent. And if it's not Scottish, it's crop. Yeah, Greta's not Scottish. Now, I know you're kidding about this, but I did want to talk about this a little bit because you're commenting, of course, because somebody commented a few videos ago that Greta Thunberg was a master. And we talk about the masters on this channel. Now, I say all this to say that, there's the majority of us who've heard about the masters, and I'm not trying to come across as some kind of superiority and authority on this, but most people who've heard about the masters know little about the masters of wisdom, and what they've heard about is coming from somebody who probably knows even less about the masters than they do, and they believe it, right? So a lot of people refer to the masters as the quote-unquote ascended masters or whatever. So people have always, through the course of this channel and even the times that I've talked about the masters of wisdom out in public and so forth, have always brought up people. And I think Bill Gates is a master. Well, I mean, the word master is just a word. I could go around thinking I'm a master and have people call me master, the Master Gary, but does that actually make me a master of wisdom? Of course not, right? I'm still just who I am, right? I'm not one step further along the path or one step behind than where I'm at right now, right? Now, and again, like I said, I know you're joking about this, but I did want to talk about this, but we really don't, and I'm including myself in this, know and understand the level of consciousness of a master. Now it will be a lot easier for us to understand who and what a master really is when we see the masters, in our own lives, on TV, in public, and those kind of things, coming to our cities, maybe even working with them in a group formation or something, and working with them in that way, to really get a sense of who they possibly could be. And for ages, none of us have known who the masters were. So it's understandable that we would not necessarily know per se who and what a master is, how a master thinks, and the level of consciousness that they're at. But you kind of put it into perspective as from somebody at our level could even try to even comprehend it, right? There's actually a cosmic being on our planet who's Maitreya is the master of all the masters, but he is actually, this cosmic being stepped in as kind of like a regent for our planetary logos, the soul that ensouls our entire planet, the one in whom we live and whom and have our, the one in whom we live and move and have our being, as Paul put it. And if it wasn't for this cosmic being, we would still be living as bushmen or cavemen and women. Really, early animal man. That would be the level of that we would be at. So the whole history of humanity, with all the technology that we've had, and the knowledge of the universe, would not even be a glimmer in our eye yet. And it's because of his cosmic nature that it allowed, he affected the environment in that way that it's actually created the humanity that it is today. He's one of the 7 great Kumars of our solar system, one of the 7 great consciousness that actually can ensoul, is even able to be ensouled in our and incarnated in our solar system. But from the master Djwal Khul, who wrote all the books through Alice Bailey, said about this being that his level of consciousness, the ratio between his level of consciousness and an entry-level master, a master of the 5th initiation, so somebody who just became a master, it's about the ratio, about the scale of, would be a master to early animal man. So I would say probably it would be even a greater difference in terms of level of consciousness and what they know and how they live their life and who they are and everything moment to moment. A master and somebody like all of us would be probably the same as, or more even, as somebody like the consciousness of Leonardo da Vinci, high-level creative genius person, altogether, and a domesticated animal, maybe. It might even be greater. It might be even a greater difference than that. I don't know, because it's an expansion of consciousness. They're what they see and their control over matter and so forth is, we can't really comprehend it yet. But it's rare on this planet to be a master at this moment in time. But eventually, all of us will be masters. But it will, of course, the whole process will speed up once we start seeing these masters first and foremost, and then we interact with them, and then we work with them. We try to, live the way that they live within the law of harmlessness and so forth, which will create less karma, which will it will evolve faster, and so forth and so forth and so forth. But of course, when somebody says, somebody like Greta Thunberg's a master, or Bill Gates, or whoever else is a master, it's just a lack of understanding of really, and it's understandable because most of us don't know. But in time, we'll know very clearly who and what the masters are and how they're like and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully that helps. Alrighty. Next one. Comes from David O. All right. Thank you for addressing my question related to Philippians. Of course, anytime. As believing Jesus is the Son of God, I've lately been listening to a rabbi who speaks on Jesus and why he is not the Messiah, which adds to the confusion for me. Well, if I could lend my opinion on this, well, of course, the reason why this rabbi does not believe Jesus is the Messiah is because the Jewish people missed him as the Messiah. They didn't recognize him as the Messiah. And esoterically speaking, Jesus was the Messiah. Now, Maitreya worked through Jesus telepathically 2,000 years ago, but Jesus' role was to be the world teacher for the age that's coming to an end now, the age of Pisces, but for then it was like the new age to them, right? And because of their misinterpretation of their own scriptures, they didn't see Jesus as the Messiah. And even to this day, the Jewish people don't recognize him as the Messiah. But in reality, he was the Messiah. So it would stand to reason that a rabbi would not see Jesus as the Messiah. And the thing of it is that it really is, and this is what we talked about in the last video, David, and I know you get this, but I'm just sharing this for everybody else too. It's, if you believe Jesus is the Son of God, there's nothing wrong with that, but like I was suggesting, why not look to Jesus' teachings for justice, for the need to help the poor and so forth, or the hungry in the world or so forth. And that's the most important thing anyway, I think. But faith the way that humanity manifests it today is centered on belief. And somebody can come in from outside of your belief system if they're very domineering or they're a bully or they're very opinionated, can rock your belief and challenge it and create confusion for yourself. Now, the Buddha would say that's good because confusion's one of the guardians of the gates to enlightenment, right? And I think it's always good to challenge your own beliefs within yourself, right, to see if they're true. Because just because we believe something to be true doesn't mean it's true, right? So, and just because we believe something to not be true doesn't mean that it's not true. Just like the nuclear, the person who put that in a nuclear, nukes are safe, unless weaponized, right? Well, you can believe it all you want. Does it really make it safe? Well, I mean, the master would say, no, it's really not safe. It's quite dangerous, right? So it's just belief. We hold so much regard to our belief and other people's beliefs and so forth, and then you want to be politically correct so you don't rock somebody else's belief structure and so forth. And does that really help them or not? Whatever. But in the end, I think we'll look at it more as belief is just belief, just like words are just words. Just like I talked about earlier. I mean, just because somebody calls themselves a master doesn't make them a master. Just because my name is Gary doesn't mean I'm Gary. It just means my name's Gary. We're living the world back assward, as they say, or whatever, But anyway, you understand what I'm saying. But it's also important to have faith in what we believe is true, and if your faith is that Jesus is the only true Son of God, then who is it for anybody to tell you otherwise? Really. But I would say the most important thing is to live within the teachings of the Jesus that you believe, which he was about helping the poor, bringing about justice to the world, and so forth and so forth. And as for the Shroud of Turin, yes, it's. I agree with what Zen was saying. Scientifically, it's already been scientifically proven, but the carbon dating process is really more of a generalization. That's why they can't really prove, to scientists where they understand that it's 2,000 years old, because there's like a 1,000-year plus or minus, level, what do they call it, the, measure of error. But, I believe 100% that it shows Jesus, who Jesus was and so forth, and that's how he looked and all that kind of stuff. But, it's for us to believe this or not for ourselves. Now, I do want to thank everybody who commented, even the one that put like 30 emojis in there. I don't even understand those emojis. But anyway, I don't know if that's good or not. Matt Zawar. I'm not an emoji expert. I'm not fluent in emojis, so hopefully those are good emojis. All right. Now, I do want to read a couple, one's actually bits and pieces of an article from Benjamin Creme's Master, and then I want to read the other one in all the way through. And the reason is because we're in October now, and in a little over a month, the United States is going to go to the polls and elect a president. And I know for those of us who are listening to this channel, it turns a lot of us off that I'm talking about politics, but political change is an important part of the needed changes to help save our planet. And that's the reason why I'm saying what I'm saying. So it's not like I'm trying to politically divide people in the same way that a political pundit would. So please understand that. But and in no way, shape, or form am I saying, just because I'm speaking out against the current administration, that means that I side 100% with the Democrats, because that's not true either. There are good things that the Republicans are fighting for, and there are good things that the Democrats are fighting for. And I'm hoping that what the masters see for the future of politics is true, that it would be a synthesis of the two viewpoints and not one at the exclusion of the other, because that's not, humanity is made up of both ways of looking at things. So therefore, humanity must be involved together to help solve the problems. But and Maitreya won't even align himself with any political party. So, he'll speak out against the injustices of the Democratic Party just as much as he will against the Republican Party in the United States, or the Labor or the Conservatives or whatever that is the Tory party. I don't even know the political systems in Britain or whoever, but he'll speak out against injustice, and if one party is manifesting some kind of injustice, he's going to speak out against it. If he isn't already. But the main thing is we have to look at who is remotely better for the upcoming year or so, 2 years. I don't think we can really think in terms of 5, 10, 20 years because there's a lot of changes coming on down the road that, and at an accelerated pace that we really can't account for yet. But the reason why I wanted to read the first bits and pieces is this was written about the Bush administration. Okay, now there's a saying that I love. It comes from a baseball player, Yogi Berra, who his quotes are quite funny, but there's a lot of wisdom and truth to his quotes. But one of the things he said was, "It's deja vu all over again," right? So he wrote this in 2004, and it's deja vu all over again. But if you kind of get through the whole thing about Iraq and kind of look at the political situation of today as divided as the United States is politically, it can help shed some light on some of this stuff because it's going on again. It's only a matter of time before the people of the United States realize that they have made a grievous mistake. They have reinstated, albeit with the aid of many stolen votes, a man and administration dedicated to the creation of division and hatred both nationally and internationally. They will ruefully watch an attack on their proudly held freedoms. They will see a steep decline in their standard of living as the government of necessity strives to tackle their enormous debts. They will witness a loss of confidence in their currency and a sharp reversal of trade with their traditional trading partners. The calamitous invasion of Iraq will continue to fester both in Iraq and elsewhere in the world, reacting to the fear and hatred which this administration has engendered almost universally. The tendency will be for the people to look inwards and to turn their backs even more squarely on the world. And this is what I wanted to point out, this next one. A major problem in dealing with this administration, even though he's talking about the Bush administration, keep in mind, we can look at the Trump administration in the exact same way. A major problem in dealing with this administration is the powerful illusion under which it works, that it is God-inspired and so in divine grace helping to restore the Christian world and message to its former power and glory. Keep America great again, or make America great again. Look at that. Thus has the USA taken a huge step backwards, isolating itself from the true concerns of much of the world, environmental pollution, and the demands of a planet suffering under the strains of impending disaster. So, that is ultimately why I have been personally speaking out against this current administration, because I think that this glamour that it's perpetrating on the American people is causing a large segment of the Christian base to believe that it is being, guided by the hand of God, and see that all the evils that he's, they don't see the evils that he's doing, not only to this country, to the Constitution, to democracy as a whole, but to the whole planet. And that is a major, major, major problem. And so while that illusion is manifesting within the political structure and the political administration of, the White House and Congress and so forth, I think it's those who see it as a problem should be speaking out in any way, shape, or form that they are, because it's quite dangerous. Now, I want to read this one all the way through, because he's talking about the sword of cleavage, and he talks about it in a amazing way. But if you listen to the first paragraph, you can kind of apply it to a lot of political figures over the years, but it really does speak to how somebody like Trump can have such a devoted following, even though he's lying to them, and they believe it. So they sop it up with a biscuit. Creating the sword of cleavage. From time to time, there appears among men a figure who embodies the best or the worst that men can show. These individuals become the most loved or the most hated of men. In either case, they usually draw to themselves many followers or devotees. Such figures have enormous magnetic appeal for the majority of men, or on occasion are an inspiring example of destructive power, on a large scale. The history books are full of examples of both types. Today, in large numbers, many examples of both types are manifesting worldwide. The effect of this manifestation is to set before humanity two opposing lines of action, and so create the tension of choice, which will determine the future of the race. In biblical terms, this is the sword of cleavage. For many years, the energies emanating from and directed by Maitreya have sought to create such confrontation of opposites. This may seem strange indeed to many people, but it is essential that humanity make the correct choices for its future. Otherwise, that future would be bleak indeed. The sword of cleavage is the energy we call love. Wielded by Maitreya, it sets quote-unquote brother against brother and tests the true divine consciousness of men everywhere. The ultimate aim of all evolution is to establish on earth the quote-unquote kingdom of God, and the sword of cleavage shows men the way. The teaching of Maitreya is simple, one might think, that his priorities would seem obvious to all men. Sadly, this is not the case. Maitreya presents a future of tranquility and peaceful endeavor as the inevitable result of sharing and justice for all. The creation of a world, quote-unquote, where no man lacks, where no 2 days are alike, where the joy of brotherhood manifests through all men, unquote. How is it possible, you might think, to gainsay such a message of hope? Is this not the future yearned for by everyone? It is the future hoped for by the majority of men, but not by all. Humanity stands on different rungs of the evolutionary ladder. Above a certain level, all bodes well for men. It is those who have not as yet manifested that measure of their divine self who do not recognize that sharing is divine, that justice and right relationship are divine, but who see divinity as competition and conflict and register a man's worth by the weight of his gold. Many are fearful and suffering, bereft of work and hope for the future. They struggle from day to day, but many others are making their future for themselves, and many too are dying in the process. Throughout the world, men are awakening to the possibility of a better life with freedom and justice at its heart. Have no fear, the people's voice is rising, and like a contagion, affecting more and more. Maitreya stands behind those who live or die for the truth of freedom, justice, and the unity of men. The young lead the way, and remember to take action is for them and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.